It represents a departure from decades of Western alignment, particularly with France, and a declaration that the country is ready to chart a new course.
After the recent coup, Burkina Faso just made a move that could end 2 centuries of Western control over Africa, and almost nobody in the West is ready for what's coming. But why would a country, under siege by insurgency and sanctions, dare to challenge the most powerful empires in history? Let's find out. For decades, the relationship between Africa and the West was never truly about partnership. It was about survival, but not for Africa. It was survival for Western influence, Western economies, and Western political dominance. Under the cover of aid, security assistance, and development partnerships, a quiet system of control was built. And Burkina Faso, like much of West Africa, was trapped inside it. The French military arrived under the flag of anti-insurgency. Their mission was clear: crush jihadist groups that were tearing through the Sahel. But year after year, the insurgents expanded. Towns fell. Civilians died. Prosperity crumbled. For the people living through it, the math was simple. The longer the French stayed, the worse things got. It was no longer possible to pretend that the foreign boots on Sahelian soil were there to protect anyone except Western strategic interests. Burkina Faso's economy told the same story. Despite its mineral wealth, gold, manganese, zinc, the country remained one of the poorest in the world. Its currency, the CFA franc, was still tied to the French treasury, a colonial relic designed to ensure that African economies could never truly outgrow their European guardianship. Every financial decision, from infrastructure projects to debt agreements, required approval from Paris or Western-controlled institutions like the IMF. Aid was never free. It came with conditions: privatize your resources, open your markets, adopt Western-style reforms, even when they triggered social collapse. If a leader resisted, there were quiet methods: withdrawal of funds, diplomatic isolation, engineered protests, or worse. Africa was allowed to exist, but only on Western terms. The betrayal was not only economic and military, it was psychological. Burkina Faso, Mali, and their neighbors were constantly reminded that they were incapable without Western oversight. Local governments were treated like caretakers of Western interests, not sovereign rulers. Democracy was celebrated only when it produced leaders who played by external rules. Sovereignty was tolerated only when it did not interfere with foreign access to mines, oil fields, and strategic military outposts. Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not rise out of nowhere. His ascent to power was the natural explosion after years of humiliation, exploitation, and growing national rage. The Burkinabe youth who filled the streets waving Russian flags and chanting anti-French slogans were not paid protesters. They were a generation born into broken promises, and they were done waiting for Western saviors who never came. When Traoré spoke of Burkina Faso needing true partners, not masters, it was not political theater. It was a reflection of a deep, bitter truth that ordinary citizens already knew. The West had not failed to help Burkina Faso. It had succeeded in helping itself and left Burkina Faso to bleed. Even security guarantees turned into a farce. French bases often stood idle while insurgents roamed free just kilometers away. Intelligence operations prioritized tracking regional rivals, not protecting Burkinabe civilians. The final insult came when Western diplomats scolded Traoré for rejecting their military presence, even after it had so clearly failed. It was clear, the West did not care about victory. It cared about maintaining a presence. And so, when Traoré expelled French forces, shuttered Western military partnerships, and began to speak openly about joining BRICS, it wasn't a sudden betrayal of old friends. It was a long overdue burial of a system that had failed Burkina Faso at every level. The choice was no longer between West and East. It was between living under endless humiliation or risking something new. The alliance of Sahel states, formed with Mali and Niger, became a symbol of that choice. No longer would outside powers dictate who could govern, how resources would be sold, or which wars were worth fighting. In a world where African nations were historically punished for even whispering independence, Burkina Faso was now shouting it. But as the old pillars of Western power in the Sahel began to crack, another question arose. Could the East, BRICS bloc Traoré was betting on offer something different? Or was Burkina Faso simply trading one master for another, dressed in different colors? The search for new partners had begun, but the scars of old betrayals would not heal easily. And so, as Traoré extended his hand toward BRICS, he wasn't just seeking allies. He was seeking redemption for an entire generation, the generation that watched Western promises turn to ashes and vowed never to beg again. The stakes could not be higher. Because for Burkina Faso, and perhaps for all of Africa, this is no longer just about trade deals or foreign policy. It's about answering a question that history has too often denied them. Can Africa finally stand without kneeling to anyone? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. For a nation like Burkina Faso, bruised by broken alliances and suffocated by old dependencies, BRICS represents more than a bloc. It represents the hope of rewriting its future. Yet hope, history warns, can be a dangerous thing. When Captain Traoré and the leaders of Mali and Niger turned their eyes eastward, they saw an alliance that spoke a different language from the West. BRICS, composed of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, presents itself not as a club of ideological missionaries, but as a coalition of pragmatists. It promises trade without lectures, loans without political sermons, and partnerships without the arrogance of assumed superiority. At first glance, this new horizon seems irresistible. BRICS offers what Africa has always craved but rarely received: respect without strings. The bloc's core principles, sovereignty, non-interference, mutual development, directly contrast with the conditional, paternalistic approach of the West. No demands for regime change, no instructions on how to organize elections, no hidden clauses wrapped in shiny aid packages. For Burkina Faso, the appeal is clear. BRICS means the possibility of financing infrastructure through the new development bank NDB without surrendering economic policy to Washington technocrats. It means trading gold, cotton, and minerals using national currencies rather than being trapped in dollar-dominated systems that bleed value away through hidden costs. It means finding security partnerships that don't require giving up control over domestic politics. But beneath the promises, a more complicated reality lurks. BRICS itself is not a monolith. Its members harbor deep divisions, most notably between China and India, whose border disputes and rival ambitions often strain unity. Brazil swings between leftist and rightist governments, each with different visions for international cooperation. Russia, under crushing Western sanctions, is increasingly desperate for new markets and diplomatic victories. Even South Africa, Africa's own BRICS representative, struggles with internal instability and economic challenges. For Burkina Faso, the danger is subtle but real. In seeking to escape one empire, it may stumble into the arms of another, one more careful perhaps, but no less self-interested. China's Belt and Road Initiative (BRI) has built roads, ports, and railways across Africa, but it has also saddled countries with debts they could not repay. In nations like Zambia and Kenya, Chinese financing initially promised liberation from Western lenders, only to result in new forms of dependency when repayment terms turned harsh. Russian security partnerships, while presented as mutual defense pacts, often prioritize Russian strategic interests, sometimes at the cost of African autonomy. Traoré faces a delicate challenge. He must leverage the opportunities BRICS offers without surrendering the sovereignty he fought so hard to reclaim. He must ensure that infrastructure projects, trade deals, and military collaborations genuinely serve Burkina Faso's national interests, not just those of the new partners at the table. The stakes are existential. If Traoré navigates this correctly, Burkina Faso could emerge as a pioneer for a truly sovereign African development model, one that blends external partnerships with internal strength. If he miscalculates, however, the country risks becoming a client state once again, just under different management. There is reason for cautious optimism. Unlike Western alliances, BRICS does not operate through a single commanding center. No one country holds total authority. Decisions require consensus, and smaller nations have space to negotiate terms. This decentralized structure could empower African states to play a more active, assertive role than they ever could within Western-dominated systems like the IMF, World Bank, or even ECOWAS. Moreover, the BRICS expansion plan, which recently welcomed nations like Egypt, Ethiopia, and Saudi Arabia into partnership dialogues, suggests a growing recognition that the bloc's future power depends on elevating Global South voices, not just exploiting them. For Burkina Faso, this means there is a window, small but real, to shape its terms of engagement. Traoré's government must move wisely, balancing its desperate need for development with the vigilance to avoid new traps of dependency. The battle for sovereignty does not end with joining BRICS. It simply moves to a different arena, one where the prizes are bigger, but so are the risks. Above all, Burkina Faso must remember one hard lesson learned through bitter experience. No foreign partner, East or West, will ever love Africa more than Africa must love itself. As BRICS opens its doors wider to the Sahel states, the question is no longer whether Burkina Faso can find partners. The real question is whether it can find partners who respect Africa's right to dream its dreams and fight for them, no matter who stands in the way. The dream is alive, but now comes the test. Can it survive the first embrace of new power? When Burkina Faso extended its hand to BRICS, it wasn't just forging a new partnership. It was lighting a match under the fragile architecture of Western influence in Africa. To many in Washington, Paris, and Brussels, the announcement sent a chill through diplomatic circles far colder than any formal declaration of war. It wasn't just the loss of one country. It was the signal that the system itself, the quiet machinery that had kept Africa tethered to Western capitals, was starting to break. For over a century, control over African nations did not always require direct colonization. It evolved into something subtler: financial dependency through institutions like the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, political pressure through conditional aid, and military influence disguised as counterinsurgency assistance. This model allowed Western nations to project power cheaply while ensuring access to Africa's minerals, agricultural wealth, and strategic territories. It was a system designed to be invisible, operating beneath layers of diplomacy, treaties, and economic agreements. Traoré's pivot threatens to expose that system for what it truly is: an empire without borders. The implications are staggering. Burkina Faso might seem small on a map, but its symbolic value is enormous. It occupies a critical position in the Sahel, a region the West has long considered essential for counterinsurgency operations and access to resources. If Burkina Faso successfully reorients toward BRICS and stabilizes outside Western influence, it would create a roadmap for other nations trapped in similar dynamics, nations like Senegal, Chad, Guinea, and even the Ivory Coast. The fear in Western capitals is not just that Burkina Faso will leave, it's that others will follow, and that the entire illusion of indispensable Western leadership in Africa will shatter. Already the ripples are visible. Mali, after expelling French troops, swiftly moved closer to Russian security contractors. Niger, following its rupture with France, sought new pathways through Turkey, Russia, and now BRICS. Across West Africa, popular movements are growing bolder, waving not French flags but BRICS banners at protests. A generation once taught that salvation could only come from Paris or Washington is now daring to imagine salvation coming from within, or at least from partners who do not treat them as chess pieces. In response, the Western playbook is beginning to crack under the pressure. Sanctions, once the preferred tool for disciplining rebellious governments, have proven largely ineffective. Burkina Faso and its allies have weathered financial punishments with unexpected resilience, relying on new trading partnerships, domestic production pushes, and nationalist energy that Western policymakers did not anticipate. Even military threats are less effective. The credibility of Western-backed ECOWAS interventions collapsed after their inability to reverse coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Attempts to mobilize neighboring states against Traoré's government found little enthusiasm. The old tactics, economic isolation, diplomatic condemnation, covert destabilization, are not working as they once did. This has created a dangerous moment for Western strategists, a realization that influence once lost cannot easily be regained. In past decades, a single phone call from Washington or Paris could dictate leadership changes in Ouagadougou. Today, those calls go unanswered, or worse, publicly mocked. The West's fear is not irrational. If Africa realigns toward BRICS, the consequences extend far beyond geopolitics. It would disrupt Yet the greatest threat Traoré poses to the West is not military, economic, or even diplomatic. It's psychological. By daring to say no and survive, he offers proof that the empire is not invincible. That a small, landlocked country with no nuclear weapons, no massive army, and no Wall Street ties can still defy the most powerful interests on Earth and chart its path. That is the contagion the West truly fears. Not rebellion, but hope. Hope that Africa does not need permission to be great. Hope that sovereignty is not a fantasy, but a right waiting to be reclaimed. And if Burkina Faso's gamble succeeds, the old world order, the one built on quiet domination and polite exploitation, may crumble faster than anyone dares to admit. But even if it succeeds, a new challenge awaits Traoré and his allies. Can they turn rebellion into resilience and dreams into durable power? Because standing up is only the first battle. Staying standing, without falling into new traps, will be the real war ahead. BRICS, with its bold rhetoric of respect, sovereignty, and multipolarity, offers tantalizing promises. Access to the new development bank without political conditions. Trade in national currencies, not dollars. Infrastructure investments are designed to uplift, not to dominate. It is a vision designed to appeal to every nation, bruised by decades of Western bullying. But beneath the surface, serious questions remain. BRICS is still, fundamentally, a gathering of self-interested nations. Its nations have their own ambitions, their own priorities, their own red lines. And when those ambitions collide, as they inevitably do, it is the smaller, less powerful members who are asked to bend. China's record in Africa, for instance, is a story of both hope and hazard. Beijing has built roads, airports, power plants, and ports, often faster and cheaper than any Western company would dare. Yet it has also demanded control over key assets when debts go unpaid. Strategic ports leased for 99 years. Mining concessions are quietly tied up by Chinese state-owned firms. Infrastructure projects that, while impressive, sometimes serve Chinese export needs more than African economies. Russia's promises of military cooperation and security partnerships must also be weighed carefully. Moscow is eager to sell arms, deploy private contractors, and forge alliances, but it has its own interests at heart. For Russia, Africa is not a charity project. It is a battlefield for influence against NATO and the European Union. Even India, often overlooked in these discussions, sees Africa not just as a partner, but as a market for pharmaceuticals, for technology, for political influence in the global south. This is not inherently bad. Nations act in their self-interest. But for Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, it means that navigating BRICS will require the same vigilance, the same skepticism, and the same hard negotiations they once wished they had applied to their Western partnerships. But many say it will still be better than the West. There is another risk: fragmentation. BRICS itself is not tightly unified. China and India, in particular, are locked in geopolitical rivalry. Russia, isolated from the West, is eager to bind BRICS closer, but its desperation could either strengthen the bloc or fracture it under pressure. Brazil swings between internationalism and isolationism depending on who is in power. Even South Africa faces internal political turbulence that could distract it from its global ambitions. In short, BRICS is not a single ship sailing toward a clear destination. It is a fleet of different vessels, each pulling slightly against the others. For Africa, this creates both danger and opportunity. Danger because promises can be diluted, delayed, or derailed by internal BRICS conflicts. Opportunity because, unlike with Western structures where orders were simply handed down, African states have space to negotiate, to pit partners against one another when necessary, to carve out favorable terms without being chained to one hegemon. This demands a new kind of leadership from figures like Captain Traoré. Leadership that is not only brave but strategically shrewd. It demands building strong, technocratic domestic institutions that can manage foreign deals without falling into dependency. Forming regional blocs like the Alliance of Sahel States that negotiate as a collective, amplifying bargaining power. Investing heavily in internal industries, agriculture, manufacturing, energy, to ensure that foreign partnerships serve national development, not foreign extraction. Most importantly, It demands the courage to say no, even to BRICS, even to China, even to Russia, if deals threaten to repeat the mistakes of the past. While BRICS offers Africa a seat at a new table, it does not guarantee what is served. Burkina Faso's revolution will not be judged by the flags it flies or the speeches it gives. It will be judged by whether 5, 10, or 20 years from now, its children walk roads they own, drink water from systems they control, and work in industries that feed their own families, not foreign conglomerates. The West once offered promises of partnership, only to deliver domination. If BRICS does the same, the tragedy will not be that Traoré trusted too easily. It will be that Africa, after centuries of struggle, failed to recognize that true independence is never given. It must be built, fought for, protected, every single day. But the truth is, this man isn't naive. He knows exactly what he's doing. And more importantly, he knows how to join BRICS without becoming anyone's puppet. Traoré understands that real sovereignty means partnership, not submission. And if anyone still worries, just look at how BRICS itself had to adapt and compromise during its expansion. BRICS is not some empire demanding loyalty. It's a table where even giants bow when necessary. Traoré is playing his cards smartly, and so far, he's shown he's ready to use BRICS to lift Burkina Faso, not kneel to it. So, can Traoré and the new Africa he represents truly build a sovereign future, or will they be forced to fight all over again? Let us know in the comment section. Has Burkina Faso secured its future? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.